Hello, and welcome to Forward Thinking, a podcast from Learning Forward Texas. I'm Debbie Tanton, the Director of Business Operations for Learning Forward Texas, and I'm excited to be your host today. Before we get started, I also want to introduce my colleague, Lisa Ham, Director of Marketing for Learning Forward Texas. Lisa is the producer of this podcast and helps bring those conversations to life. Many of you already know Lisa through our newsletters, our social media, and conference communications. We're grateful for the work she's doing behind the scenes to make this podcast possible. Also joining us today is our webmaster, Andrew Summers, who is here to support as well and get us into the podcast world. We're excited to get started. Forward Thinking is designed for educators who lead and support professional learning in their schools and districts. Our goal is to share ideas, perspectives, and practical insights from educators across the field who are working to strengthen teaching and learning through high-quality professional learning. In each episode, we will spend time in conversation with leaders and practitioners who are doing this work every day. We hope these conversations spark ideas that you can bring back to your own systems and teams. Today's episode is the first in a three-part series focused on new teacher induction and support. Across Texas and across the country, districts are thinking more intentionally about how they welcome, support, and grow beginning educators. Historically, new teacher induction has quite often been viewed as a one-day orientation, or what sometimes happens more often, a haphazard collection of disconnected supports. However, we are starting to see some states and more districts starting to implement and design a more coherent and structured induction process to help new teachers develop their practice and build confidence over time. In this series, we will explore what it looks like when new teacher induction becomes part of the larger professional learning system and what leaders can do to design system-wide supports that truly help new teachers thrive. To begin that conversation, I'm joined today by Chris Summers. Chris is a longtime educator, author, and champion for new teacher support who, for more than a decade now, has worked with school districts across Texas and beyond to design and strengthen beginning teacher induction support systems. He is also a member of Learning Forward Texas Board of Directors, and we are grateful for the leadership and expertise that he brings to our organization. Chris is the author of the book Purpose-Driven Teacher Induction, a systemic teacher induction framework to help new teachers thrive, which helps leaders understand essential needs of new teachers and provides a simple, customizable framework for designing new teacher induction programs that move beyond orientation and compliance toward a purposeful structure that supports growth for beginning teachers. Today, we will talk about what distinguishes a true induction system from a collection of well-intended supports and what leadership moves make the greatest difference for new teachers entering the profession. Chris, thank you for joining us today. We're excited to learn from your experience and insights. And before we jump into this conversation, I just want to briefly share a word about Learning Forward Texas for listeners who may be new to our organization. Learning Forward Texas is a nonprofit professional association dedicated to enhancing and advancing high-quality professional learning for educators across Texas. Our work focuses on supporting those who design, facilitate, and lead adult learning in schools and districts. We provide workshops, conferences, resources, and collaborative opportunities that help educators strengthen the way professional learning is planned and implemented. We often describe our work as PL for PL, professional learning for those who lead professional learning. So if you're not a part of our organization already, please join us on our website. This podcast is another way that we hope to connect educators across the state and share ideas from the field. So with that, I'm excited to begin our conversation with Chris. Thank you for joining us today. And so let's start with this question. Chris, you've spent a great deal of time implementing teacher induction support and working alongside other districts as they think about how to best support beginning teachers. So let's start with the the bigger picture. Chris, for more than a decade now, you've been passionately advocating for and working with school districts across Texas and the country to develop and successfully implement systemic teacher induction. From these experiences, what do you see as the most critical elements that distinguish a true induction system from a collection of disconnected supports? And when districts begin redesigning their approach, which of these elements should they focus on first?
That's a good question, and thanks for having me be a part of this first podcast. And certainly anytime I get a chance to talk a little bit about teacher induction is always something I'm excited about doing. And, you know, teacher induction for a long time, if even when I go and I present at workshops or I work with other districts, and ask them like, what was your experience in teacher induction? If it was before about the year, maybe 2005, most people didn't have teacher induction. They might have had an orientation. They might have found a few other new teachers, and then they were sort of thrown out there and hope everything went well. But we've seen a growth in the appreciation for teacher induction, for states taking things a little more seriously. We still have a long way to go. We still have a lot of districts that might include the new teachers in an extra day of orientation, you might say, at the start of the year. They might assign them a mentor. We still see it being pretty haphazard. Most states don't fund teacher induction in a great way, but there's some bits and starts going in certain directions for states. I know even in Texas, we've started to have some grants that'll help with mentoring, and funding some of the stipends around that. And so a lot of districts are, they're well intended. They want to do a lot. They want to help their new teachers, but they're really not sure where to start. And that was really the genesis of how the book got started, and even how my work as a executive director in a district in the Corpus Christi area and growing our new teacher support systems, was just trying to figure out how to help our new teachers in a very, very difficult setting, which is, your first year in the classroom.
Absolutely. And really, I mean, we've really moved from, and we're really in the process, I think, of moving from that being onboarding. New teacher was an onboarding experience. You learned about your insurance. You learned about how to be a good employee when teaching is so complex. And so your systemic approach to helping people learn this very complex art and science that is teaching is just so hugely important to the future of our conversation, of our profession. And so we appreciate you joining us for this conversation to give us some specifics about that. Really helpful.
I would like to say something too. It kind of dawned on me after I was kind of listening to what you were saying about just how it's grown from onboarding and those kinds of things. Is, even when I first started working, 12 years ago to build out a multi-year teacher induction program, it was still very much a teacher prep program. You would hire your teachers from 4-year programs. Maybe there was a few alternative certs if they were a second career teacher. And so really the majority of the new teacher supports that we gave were with the mindset of a teacher had already done their student teaching. They had most of the pedagogy taught to them through their 4-year university program, or maybe they went back and got their master's degree in their teacher certification. But, after 2019, 2020, when COVID happened and we really saw a big shift, prior to COVID, we had uncertified teachers were around 4% of the teacher workforce. As of the latest data that I've seen in Texas, it's 12% now. And so we've seen a prolific growth in uncertified teachers. And that's not to say that these aren't people who can be great teachers. They might have come from industry. And so rather than have say a plumber or an engineer or some of these other highly technical teaching positions, have them go back and get a 4-year degree or their teacher certification. A lot of districts will do local certifications. But all that to say that really systemic teacher induction now has 3 major pieces that you have to be thinking about. It's those who go through traditional teacher prep programs. Then you have your alternative cert program, which again is a growing aspect of the education field. And then we see more and more now with like CTE and alternative certifications or local designations. So a lot of times we need to think about, how do we support a new teacher who maybe the last time they were ever in a classroom was when they graduated from high school, and it's been a long time, and we don't want them to necessarily struggle. Or if we get locked into, hey, we're going to provide teacher induction in a way that meets the needs of our traditional path teachers. Those teachers with alternative cert or CTE, they don't understand what all of the jargon is. They don't understand what an IEP is, or an ART, or 504, or a PLC, and all of those things that we take for granted a lot of times in education.
That's really helpful context, Chris. Thank you for that. So let's talk a little bit more about leadership and the role that it plays in making these systems work. You've worked with districts of many different sizes. From your perspective, what leadership moves at the district or campus level most influence whether these new teachers experience induction, like we've talked about, that's aligned and supportive and growth oriented rather than fragmented as it's been in the past?
Yeah, it's a good question. And, when I work with districts or when folks will reach out to me and go like this, how do I even get started with this? Maybe I'm an instructional coach or I'm a campus principal. Maybe I do work in central office somewhere and it's something that is jumped onto their radar. A lot of times I just tell them, get started somewhere. That's what I had to do way back in the day. I had some context of what a 1-year program looks like from a previous district I was in. And so I just reached out to people I knew that were connected with teacher induction and started building it from there. But I always tell folks, they think that maybe they have to have a big professional development or professional learning department, maybe a large curriculum and instruction department. That's really not the case. One of the things that really struck me when I was developing, the framework that I use in my day-to-day work in the district where I'm at, or what I try to coach folks in to using is you don't really need a large organization. What you need is a handful of people who are passionate about supporting new teachers. Those could be instructional coaches. They could be instructional specialists within a teaching and learning department or a curriculum department. It could be principals that have a particular passion about that. And once you start identifying the group of folks who can pour into and be connected with your new teachers, that's the first part. And so I always say when I work with folks, what is your leadership team going to look like that's going to guide this work? Because we're not all going to be in our positions forever and ever. And even when I start a teacher induction program, I've done it in 3 districts. I've worked with districts around the state and across the country. I always tell them this thing needs to outlive you. And so if you're the one who's always delivering the professional learning, always running the workshops, always checking on how teachers are doing, if you should one day leave that district, there's a good likelihood that the program, the support systems for those new teachers is going to struggle as well. So build that team and then start somewhere. Just understand who your new teachers are and develop a way in which you can bring them together 2 or 3, 4 times a year and start supporting them that way.
Yeah, and that support at the campus level as well, when you spoke about, paying it forward and what you wanna leave behind for our profession, I think that's such a powerful, thought process behind some of our best teacher mentors as well. Those that choosing the mentors that love the profession, and want to see it successful beyond their career, I think that's such a motivator for some of our best teacher mentors, and so both with district leaders, like you mentioned, and with those working with them on the day-to-day on the campus. And so thank you so much for bringing that up. I think that's a big part of what motivates us to continue to do this great teacher induction work. We want the future of education to outlive us. I love that. All right. So as districts begin building or refining these systems, many leaders also want to know how they can tell whether their efforts are actually making a difference, right? How do we know it's working? So since these districts vary quite a bit in terms of their capacity to support new teachers, in terms of the systems and the support that they have available, as well as the data systems they have in place, when leaders want to know whether their induction efforts are having an impact, what indicators should they pay attention to in order to understand whether new teachers' instructional practice, their confidence, and their long-term effectiveness are improving?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different things they can look at, and because the operations or the way in which you support new teachers, from my perspective, I always encourage folks to do it for at least 3 years, so that we have kind of a cohort model in the book or the framework that I have, and so you have year 1 support, which is a little more intense. It's the typical things that we see around supporting new teachers. They need the more regular cadence of support, pulling them out for workshops and those kinds of things. And then in year 2 and year 3, you want to keep those connections together, because we do know that the research is still out there, that if a teacher is going to leave the profession, a new teacher is going to leave the profession, it's usually within the first 5 years. Typically, it's still around 30 to 40% leave within the first 3 years, and then a few more percentages up through 5. So if we can get them to feel supported, so that teachers don't battle through those first few years of teaching and go, is this as good as it's going to get? Because if it is, I don't know if I can sign up for 25 or 30 years of that. We need to let them know that we've got them. We've got a method of support for them. We've got connections for them to be able to be successful. And so leaders, they have a couple of different things that I encourage them to look at. And there's 3 points. And I would say one is like, what's a leading indicator, right? These are your early targets. And I just say simply, are you meeting the expectations that you have for your program? Are mentors and new teachers or beginning teachers, are they meeting on a regular basis? And when they meet, is it productive? Is it quality? Are there structures for what they should be talking about and making plans from that? And then also, are your mentors being fed? Are they being connected? Are you helping them? Because a lot of teachers want to be a mentor to a new teacher, but they're good at working with other kids, right? They're good at being a teacher, but working with adult learners takes a little bit of a different craft, a little organization of skills. And so are those things happening? And then do you have like surveys? We use perception surveys at the end of every workshop that we do with new teachers. We do it every year for the 3 years that we're supporting them. And that gives us a window into how are they feeling? Are they feeling like the work that we're doing to support the new teachers is helpful? And then also in those surveys, you ask them, hey, we're feeding you, we're giving you things that we think you need. What are we missing? Because like me, I'm in my 30th year in education right now, but I left the classroom in 2000, and I left the principalship in 2014. And so even though I'm connected on a daily basis, it's easy for me to forget what the exact needs are for new teachers. And then other than that, really making sure those soft skills are there. Are your teachers communicating that they feel like their needs are being met, that this is a place where they can see their future going? And so I think those early pieces are big. And then secondarily, I look at like after year 1, maybe into year 2 and 3, are you starting to see a shift in your teachers? In other words, are they, I like to kid with my second year teachers, are you finding some free time in the week compared to year 1? So that they're not so consumed with the lesson planning process and thinking through all the things that come with teaching and preparing for that. And so are you seeing perhaps if you have a teacher evaluation or observation tool in your state or in your district, are you starting to see growth in the various domains and the areas that you're measuring? Are the walkthroughs more productive? Are you starting to see the consistency in the new teachers that you see in some of your veteran teachers? And so that's a way to kind of look at it. And then in year 3, I always like to say, have you built the human capital piece, the connection piece from a leadership standpoint? So I talked about a little while ago that the program needs to be built in a way that outlives you, the one person. We can all have passion about a particular thing, but if we're the only ones doing it, then it's going to kind of go away if we're not there forever and ever and ever. And so can your principals talk to it? Is it tied into your professional development plan for your entire district? We don't want to see a teacher induction program be this siloed aspect of teacher support. It really needs to look like, sound like, feel like, and support the larger global professional learning plan that you have for your district. And then 2, with that, your campus kind of the leaders, mentors, instructional coaches, they all feel like they're a part of that they contribute to it, and that they help the program grow. You do those things, and I think anyone who is sort of trying to launch a teacher induction program can feel like they've got a good pulse on how things are going.
Absolutely, and thank you for those takeaways. I really think you've given us some good things to think about. No matter where folks are in their induction work, no matter what stage you're at, you have some different things to think about. And so, what would you say, Chris, is the most important thought you could leave with leaders who are either starting an induction program, induction system for multiple years for their beginning teachers, or those that are already in this work and want to refine and make sure that they're following what's best practice and really meeting the needs of today's new teachers? What would be the most important thing for them to think about, would you say?
Yeah. Well, most important thing, I would say most important things. I don't know if you're going to be able to hold me down to just one.
That's fine.
But I would say that absolutely there's like the teacher component and then there's the mentor component. So let me hit the teacher part first because that's what most people are familiar with. But I would say for absolute certainty, having that cohort model and supporting your teachers through multiple years, those teachers, I mean, I've been doing this now for, 12 years and I still have teachers reach out to me and let me know that they're connected to those teachers in their cohort. And it might have been a high school teacher that they never would have connected with on a regular basis had it not been for the structure of the new teacher support system. So that cohort model, so that they have somebody to go to outside of, even if they're on a really great team or a department, or if they have a good relationship with their mentor, or they have a good relationship with their administrator, their appraiser, that person in the cohort that they meet with all of the time throughout their program is huge. Secondarily, I would say make sure any of the professional development that you provide your new teachers is really built in within a situated learning model. In other words, you really need to cadence or craft the cadence of the workshops and the support that you provide them to the time of the year and the things that are coming up. You can't be that fire hydrant at the start of the year that gives them all of the information and then expect them to retain it and be able to use it at the right time. And then the other piece that I would say is release time. Release time is huge. The reason I am absolutely bullish on and say it's really a non-negotiable is the release time for new teachers. They're barely keeping their head above the water a lot of times, especially nowadays with the planning, the parent conferences, the data collection, all of the things that we kind of heap on our new teachers. They've got to have that time where they come to a workshop and they just unplug. And they can disconnect from the things that are the regular things kind of taking over for them and give them a chance to reflect, ask questions, and grow. And then the other piece I would say is that mentorship. And a lot of times we want to just say, hey, we're going to partner you with a mentor. But the really best teacher induction programs take time to support mentors. And so you really do need to have an effective mentor training and really coach mentors up on what is it like to support adult learners. It's different than pedagogy. It's different than working with kids. And so how do you check on mentors? How do you provide them with a handbook and the expectations that you have as the sort of the director or the leader of a teacher induction program? And then how do you have those periodical check-ins on them to make sure that their needs are being met? And so that the teacher has a great relationship and experience with the mentor, and that the mentor has a great experience growing and developing new teachers. Those are probably the two biggest components that I would recommend anyone engaging in teacher induction really keeps a high focus on.
Great. We really appreciate that. We appreciate so much, Chris, your time today, and just all that you do for Learning Forward Texas to support our organization. This work that you're doing with new teacher induction and support and mentor support has already made a huge impact across the nation. So we appreciate you sharing insights from your book and your research and your practical practice on that. So Chris, like I mentioned, Chris Summers is one of our board of directors for Learning Forward Texas. He's a big advocate for professional learning and does some terrific work both within his district and outside of that. And so I just want to remind those of you that are listening that Learning Forward Texas is here to support your efforts as well. We have a couple of different ways you can continue this learning. Chris, along with Dr. Nicole Zwar from our board of directors, will be co-facilitating a pre-conference session at our annual conference on new teacher mentoring and support. And so if you're near the Dallas-Fort Worth area or even are willing to travel here on June 15th, the pre-conference session for our conference will have a focus on new teacher induction and mentoring. So we'd love to see you there. We also have a workshop for mentors of either pre-service or beginning teachers that we would love to bring into your district, called Mentoring Pre-Service and Beginning Teachers Workshop. And so if you're interested in any of these opportunities or anything else that Learning Forward Texas provides, please visit our website at learningforwardtexas.org or give me an email. I'm at ed@learningforwardtexas.org. We are going to provide Chris's contact information as well as a document which has some takeaways. And so with a little bit of a toolkit. And so we will link that along with this podcast. You can access that information. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Chris, for being here today. Thank you to Lisa and Andrew for working behind the scenes. We hope that you'll continue to follow and join us on this podcast journey. Learning Forward Texas is ready to support you in your professional learning, however we can do that. And so this is just one of the ways that we are here to support the great work you're doing in your districts. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.